Welcome back to the Wickedly Branded podcast. I'm Beverly Cornell, and today we're stepping into chapter 3 of the Marketing for Entrepreneurs book. It's a revised edition of that, and it's the quick guide to spark and ignite your marketing. It should take you maybe an hour or two to finish, to read through. Super easy, very charming book, all about marketing. It's not about the tactics and strategy. It's about how to center your marketing to be more successful. So this chapter 3 is all about your message is the magnet. And if that sounds simple, it really is simple. If it sounds easy, it rarely feels that way when you're sitting in front of a blinking cursor, is what I found. I want to start with a moment most of you, I believe, know. You open your laptop, you have something to say, you care deeply about your work. These are all things that I see in our clients. And I think you understand your clients really well, and you have real results. And yet the words arrive in like fragmented pieces. They just aren't connecting. So you type a sentence, you delete it, and you try again, save it to drafts, and close the tab because you're frustrated. And later that day, you explain your work beautifully in a voice memo to a friend. That gap is this entire chapter because messaging lives in translation, translating the movement between what you know in your body and what you can articulate in public spaces. And the reason it feels harder than it should is a thing called proximity. You are standing far too close to your work. You see all the nuance. You see all the layers, all the behind the scenes context. You see what you do and how you do it and why it matters and what it took to build it. Your audience only sees one sentence. The weight of that compression is extremely real. Over the years, I have noticed something really consistent in our brand spark experiences with clients. The moment we slow down and begin naming what is actually happening in someone's business, their message literally begins to settle. It never appears fully formed. It emerges through this pattern recognition that we have in the brand spark experience. So through noticing which clients light them up, through hearing the phrases that clients repeat back again and again, and through tracing that through line, that golden thread has followed them through their career into the work that they're doing right now. We call that through line the shimmering thread. And messaging becomes magnetic when that thread is actually visible and sparkling and shimmering in all of its glory. So let me give you an example. I worked with an interpreter who served in medical and legal spaces. Her website described her services clearly, accurate, professional, and competent. This is the same interpreter I talked about in chapter 2. And during our conversation, she shared a story about a young mother who fully understood her child's diagnosis for the first time because someone was there to translate the conversation with the doctor with precision and a lot of care. Her eyes just completely changed when she told that story. The service was, yes, ASL interpretation, American Sign Language interpretation, but the impact was dignity on such a deep and human level. When her messaging shifted to reflect that dignity through communication, everything sharpened. For her referrals increased, her confidence deepened, conversations felt far more aligned before they even began, and she was able to raise her prices. That is magnetism. It happens when your words reflect what somebody is already feeling, but hasn't yet articulated. There is something important happening neurologically in that exact moment. When someone encounters language that mirrors their internal experiences, their cognitive load completely drops. They stop working hard to interpret your language and they start recognizing themselves. Recognition builds trust really quickly. It's the quickest way to build trust. And recognition feels like she understands what this feels like. And trust forms in that space. And for marketing to work, you need trust. So many founders focus on differentiation, on standing out, on saying something original, but magnetism grows through a thing called resonance. Resonance grows from specificity, and specificity comes from lived experience. This is where niche often gets very misinterpreted. Niche sounds like a category or demographic or industry. In practice, magnetism forms around a season someone is talking through. A consultant who built success and feels the edges of misalignment. A coach who holds space for everyone else and feels her own ideas expanding faster than her structure. A creative who produces beautiful work and wants her messaging to reflect that depth beneath it. I work with people who are almost exactly like me 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, what was I feeling? I was feeling overwhelmed. I was spinning in that tornado. And that is who we work with because I have lived that experience and I have helped hundreds of entrepreneurs get through that and find their shimmering thread, their spark, the thing that creates the foundation and the helpful yes and no decision filter for their business and the next best steps for them to take to get to their vision and mission. When you speak from a lived moment rather than a demographic label, your message, it just lands so differently. For me, that person I often write to is Beverly from 10 years ago. I was capable and responsible and in demand, and I was carrying far more than I admitted, and I was fluent in strategy and quietly circling the same language for my own work. Writing to her grounds my voice. It keeps my language accurate, and it keeps me very honest. Messaging becomes easier when you're speaking to someone that you deeply recognize and connect with. And recognition comes from memory, not some imagined scenario. So let's slow this down for a second. I want you to open your notebook, open the workbook that you have, if you have the Marketing for Entrepreneurs workbook, the companion workbook, and write down 3 phrases that your clients repeat often. What do they thank you for? What do they say shifted? What do they say that felt before working with you? Those phrases carry a ton of emotional data for you. That data shapes the magnetism that you can have. So inside the brand magic method, the spark begins with awareness. Ignite organizes the awareness into a specific direction, and Blaze builds repetition around that direction long enough for recognition to keep compounding on top of each other. So chapter 3 lives primarily in spark. It is the work of listening closely to what already exists. I wanted to talk about something that often surfaces, I think, really quietly in this particular phase. Many founders carry language borrowed from earlier seasons of their business when maybe they were just freelancing or just starting out. And it worked at one point. It did. It brought traction and it felt aligned with the version of them that built that foundation. But then growth stretches your identity. The old words can feel tight and limiting and constrictive. Updating your messaging requires acknowledging that evolution, that you are an organic being that's growing and evolving as well. That acknowledgement can feel really vulnerable because changing language means owning who you are becoming. And when you say something out loud, it is something that now has to happen, right? Like when you manifest that, now it's okay, crap, I have to do that now. I have to be that person now. I see this so much in high achieving women. I think especially they outgrow earlier expressions of their work before they outgrow the responsibility that is attached to them. Their messaging lags behind, I think, a deep maturity that happens, and their magnetism is increased the moment their words catch up to their lived experience. That shift rarely requires some dramatic reinvention. It just requires some deep refinement and alignment to where they are now, but also giving them some space with room to grow as well. It requires selecting fewer and truer sentences and staying with them long enough for familiarity to build for yourself. Magnetism grows from repetition. People trust what they encounter consistently over and over again. They feel oriented when your voice remains deeply recognizable, which brings me to something very practical for our clients. When someone lands on your website or hears you on a podcast like this or reads your LinkedIn bio, 3 things should become apparent within seconds. Who you help, what you help them navigate, what changes through working with you. If those 3 elements feel scattered or disconnected, your audience works way harder than they need to, and it causes friction. When those 3 elements feel cohesive and connected, your audience will relax into the experience. Relaxation leads to attention leads to connection, and connection leads to movement, and that movement is working with you. It could be a DM, a save, a share, a discovery call, a quiet decision to follow for months before reaching out. Magnetism also includes something that's very hard for business owners, patience. Your message gains strength through familiarity, which means you have to be patient in repeating it over and over again. Let me share a story from one of our clients. She helped people in transition, and she didn't really have phrases for that to unite what she did. So what we ended up coming to was transformation through transitions. And everything she created after that was centered around that we help you when you are in transition, transform your self-trust as you evolve through the transition. And the more she said it, the more impact she had, the more alignment carried weight for her clients, the more people started to recognize themselves in her work. So if you're listening today and thinking, I understand this concept, but I struggle to articulate it, I want you to know that messaging is very iterative, meaning lots of iterations, right? Lots of different times. It evolves as you evolve. So inside Wickedly Branded, the Brand Spark experience creates a space where we sit with your language long enough to hear what wants to be named. It is 90 minutes of noticing patterns and distilling them into words that feel familiar when you read them back. And if you're working through this independently, the companion workbook for marketing for entrepreneurs guides you through message prompts designed to surface that shimmering thread. You can purchase the revised edition on Amazon or download the PDF and workbook through the link in the show notes. But when you do, you will also receive some weekly Marketing Magic newsletters and podcast updates. So this conversation will continue with you. But before we close, I want to leave you with one question that can sharpen your magnetism really quickly. When someone reads your content, can they say, that sounds like me? If the answer feels a little uncertain, I want you to return to the lived experience. Return to specificity. Return to the moment when someone sits across from you and says, I've been trying to explain this for months. Those moments are what hold your message. Next week, we're going to step into chapter 4 and talk about visibility in a way that feels human and sustainable. Showing up in front of your brand carries its own weight. Oh my goodness. And we're going to walk through that with honesty and steadiness. But until then, I want you to choose what fits your life and stay with it long enough to see what grows. Wow, what an incredible conversation we just had. I hope that this episode lit a little bit of a fire under you to finally bring your brand to life in a way that feels true to you. Remember, clarity is the spark, but activation is that fire and flame that keeps your message and your visuals and your strategy aligned, and the confidence that follows. So does that lovely thing called momentum that you've been waiting for. So if today's episode, if you loved it, make sure you are subscribed to the Wickedly Branded Marketing Podcast so you never miss an insight or a conversation. Until next time, dare to be wickedly branded.